Hey, it's strange. I spent years telling myself that I wanted deeper, long lasting friendships. But if I'm honest, sometimes I found friendship just inconvenient. Not because I didn't love people, but because relationships interrupted my routines, my control, my projects, my exercise plans, my food rules, my carefully managed little world. And underneath all of that was fear. Fear that if people really knew me, they'd see who I really was. So I isolated myself while simultaneously feeling lonely. And now in midlife, I look around and I realize I don't have those lifelong friend groups that travel together every year. And I've had to ask myself a hard question. Did fear slowly cost me the community that I longed for? Maybe you're finding yourself in a similar place in midlife. You look around and you realize that you've spent years being responsible and productive and busy, helpful, disciplined, but somehow still lonely. And maybe your friendships became occasional texts and social media likes, and maybe life just kept moving. Or maybe, like me, you slowly built life that was so structured around controlling everything that there just wasn't room left for people. And if that resonates with you, then this video is for you. I'm Lisa, and this is Second Peak Midlife. So I want to talk honestly about the subtle ways that fear and perfection and control and insecurity and striving can slowly isolate us over time, even while we're telling ourselves that we're doing everything right because it's what needs to be done. And I think that midlife has a way of finally making us stop long enough to notice it. And looking back, I don't think that it was any one big or even a conscious decision. It was smaller than that. It was 1,000 little moments of urgencies, choosing control over what seemed like chaos. But the reality was I was choosing control over connection, choosing productivity over people, choosing projects over people, choosing the safety of creating my own environment instead of the vulnerability of being fully known. And at the time, I didn't see it for what it is, and that is fear. I saw it as discipline and productivity, and I thought these were necessary priorities, requirements that everybody had, and somehow I was always behind on them. And looking back now, and maybe you do this too, I can see how much of my life was just organized around avoiding discomfort, exposure, inconvenience, and maybe even rejection. And slowly, without awareness and without meaning to, I built that life that was just really controlled but not deeply connected to others for the long term. Because I used discipline, work first, fun second, as an excuse to hide behind. Even as a child, my mom tells this story about how when I was in preschool, it was story reading time, and I was told to come join the circle, and my reply was, "Wait a minute, I have to get this Play-Doh off the table first." So I've always been a little more Martha than Mary, but I've talked a lot about this and on these videos, and for a long time I had really strict patterns with food and with exercise and with my routines, and I told myself that I was being committed and focused, but underneath it there was always this just constant pressure, this feeling like if I didn't do it exactly right, like right now, today, I would just spiral and lose control of everything, and I'd get fat. I'd never have time for this chore, or I'd lose my creative energy, I'd lose the flow, and that happened again and again. And so when something interrupted that, a schedule change, or somebody needing me, or an unexpected invitation, impromptu, I didn't experience that as something neutral. I experienced it more as a threat, like something was being taken from me. And in a sense it was, because my control was being compromised. And what was worse was I couldn't tell anyone how fragile it all felt. I felt like it all depended on me. I carried so much weight, figuratively, and sometimes it would manifest itself even physically. And I didn't have the language for that at the time because I don't think I even realized what it was. But on the outside, it looked like irritation and rigidity and honestly selfishness. And it truly was. But in those moments, my agenda mattered more than the person in front of me. And I couldn't see that. And they couldn't see how desperate giving up that small bit of control made me feel. And I thought I was just trying to stay consistent or get the work done. But I didn't understand the difference between consistency or perfection and obsessiveness. And consistency says, I'll keep going even if today doesn't go as planned. But obsessive perfection says, if this moment goes wrong, everything's ruined. And I was living in that second one, which meant there wasn't a lot of room for other people. Not really. Because I was so focused on trying to be thin enough, fun enough, interesting enough, smart enough to be the kind of person that I thought people wanted, that I missed something simple. And that's just being the person that they actually wanted me to be, just being there. And so that led to something that I didn't fully see at the time, too. I started isolating myself, and not always physically, but always internally and emotionally, keeping people at a distance, because I was afraid that if they really knew me, they would see all of my flaws and all of the things that I was trying to hide, things that I was ashamed of, that I wasn't who I was presenting myself to be. So instead of risking that, I controlled what I could. My body, my routine, my environment, and I insulated myself. I insulated myself from interruption, from unpredictability, from being open, from actually being there. And the cost of that was true connection, real, long-term friendship. The kind where people know you over years. And I'll be honest, this is something that I'm still figuring out because I don't have that kind of community right now. I'm working on it, but I don't have it the way that I'm describing it. And I think there are probably a lot of us in the same place, wanting something deeper, but not really knowing how to build it, especially in this stage of life. I don't have that group from high school or college that goes on trips together every year, like some acquaintances of mine post about on Facebook, the girls' trips and the long-standing friendships. One friend of mine posted about a trip to the Caribbean with her closest friends. My sister-in-law takes her annual beach trips with her college group. My mom, at 85, still meets monthly with her friends from high school. And my sister has friendships that have carried her through high school and nursing school and her career. And I look at that and I realize I don't have that. My life has looked different. It's been more like intense friendships for a season. They're deeply meaningful, and then they just fade. There's no falling out. There's no conflict. Life just moves on. Circumstances change, and the connection just kind of goes with it. And I've had to ask myself, why is that? Is it laziness? Is it not making the call? Is it not following up? Is it not going to get the coffee? Is it fatigue? Is it indifference? Is it something deeper that I just didn't see? I think some of that was how I was showing up or not showing up. And I'm not saying that with condemnation, I'm just being truthful. Because I really didn't understand it then. I thought that I was protecting progress in some way. I was really just protecting myself from being exposed and from um, being known. And what I'm learning now is that real consistency has room in it. It has room for interruptions. It has room for people. It has room for life. And it's not so fragile that it falls apart because one day doesn't go perfectly. And I'm learning that relationships aren't built by being impressive. They're built by being present, by being together, and just by being there. And that's a very different way of living. It's slower. It's less controlled. And honestly, it requires more trust. But it also feels more real. And maybe that's part of what midlife is too, is starting to see clearly the things that you thought were strengths that were actually driven by fear. And just beginning to let go of them. Not all at once, but little by little, and unlearning the ways that I connected food and control and identity to relationships, and learning how to be with people without needing to prove anything and without requiring others to conform to my personal quirks, and just showing up as you are with flexibility, and knowing in whom I am, that everybody has a past, and Christ is sufficiently covering that past with his righteousness. So I am free in him, and I don't have to hide who I am anymore. And I don't have to strive to be more than I am or more than he is. And so I'm able to relax. And I can know that projects can wait. I'll have an eternity in heaven to express my creativity. And that reminds me, because it helps me to see another pattern, that I've filled my life with projects. There was always something that needed to be done. The house, it's a fixer-upper. We always need to do something. We need to paint. We need to fix this. We need to work on that. And I would tell myself that I can't go. I can't go right now. There's just too much to do. Or even something as simple as, well, it's sunny today. I have to pull the weeds. Because if I don't do it today, then when will it get done? It might rain next weekend, or something else will come up. And also we couldn't afford to just pay somebody to do it. And everything was on us. All the maintenance, all the projects, all the responsibility. So there's a part of that was just real life and real limitations, real financial constraints, real tasks. And I don't want to ignore that or trivialize that, because that matters. That was impactful. But I can also see now that even with that, there were choices, small ones, moments where I could have said, this can wait, and I didn't. Because sometimes choosing the project felt more pressing and urgent. And simultaneously, it was also more controllable than choosing people. And sometimes it wasn't just about time. It was often about money. Friends doing things that we couldn't afford. Trips, dinners out, experiences that just weren't realistic for our budget. And instead of navigating that, instead of finding another way to stay connected, I think I just stepped back and just let it fade, because it was easier than feeling like I didn't fit or couldn't keep up. And again, it wasn't one big decision, no single moment to pinpoint, just a series of small ones. And choosing what I felt like needed to be done over what could have been built. And at the time, the chores, like the story of Martha, felt more important than the relationship. Did I always think that they would just be there waiting? And it felt like we were doing the right thing and being good stewards and taking care of what was ours. But looking back, I can see that some of those choices just kept me in my lane and out of deeper connection. And now I feel the result of that. I don't have that group from high school or college, that goes on these trips together every year. And in some ways, I feel a little bit of jealousy seeing those friendships and wondering what it would feel like if I had stayed connected to the people that I've known over time, and wondering with curiosity about what they're even doing now. And also wondering what it says about me, as a person, as a friend. And I don't think the answer is that I'm not capable of it. I think the answer is I haven't been building it, at least not intentionally, for the long term. And maybe that's what midlife is too, is just seeing clearly in hindsight what you thought just happened in life, and realizing that it's actually something that you can do something about, something that you can choose, something you build. And in a way that feels a little bit sobering and also a little bit hopeful, because it means that it's not too late. It just means that I have to show up differently and have less of the attitude that I need to get this right or I need to get that finished first, and have more grace and less control, more presence, less performance. I think more honesty and less protecting, more risk of being open, and learning how to be with people without needing to be anything but you, and just showing up as you are. And I think that this is where midlife starts to change things, because you begin to realize that you don't want a lot of surface relationships anymore. You don't want to perform. You don't want to impress. You don't want to keep up an image. You want something deeper, real, lasting connection. And the hard part is you can't have that while you're still protecting yourself. You can't build real community from behind control or perfection or fear or laziness or presumption. And for a long time, I was waiting for community to just happen, to find my people, without taking the risk of being vulnerable. Loving others requires the risk of getting hurt. Or maybe I would just assume that friendships would last without effort, and I was wrong. So I think part of midlife too is not just wanting deeper relationships, but being willing to become the kind of person who can actually have them. And that means being more Mary and being less Martha. And that's something that I'm really still working hard on, because it's easier to stay in your routines and to stay in your safe patterns and to stay in control than it is to take the risk. But I don't want to live that way anymore. I don't want to be on the outside looking in. I want to be in it, no matter how messy or imperfect, and trusting that that's actually enough. And that's where real community begins. And maybe this is the beginning of something. Thanks for watching.